You received a call from
Cat.
an inmate at the Washington Corrections Center for Women. This call will be recorded and monitored. If you wish to block any future calls of this nature, dial 7 now. To accept this call, press 5 now. To decline this call, hang up.
Hi, Kat. How are you, young lady?
I am fine, thank you. I visited with my son yesterday. Thank you for your help.
My pleasure. I still can't believe that prison is messing with people's visitation like that. Your son will help you recover and help you get back on to solid ground. And visiting with him is definitely a plus in your rehabilitation. So for the DOC to create all of those obstacles, it just doesn't make any sense at all. And so I think if we keep pushing it, maybe we can get them to just leave visitation alone and let people who qualify get in there quickly instead of putting all these little obstacles up there. Your son's a good person, and you need him for your rehabilitation. And I just don't see why you have to go through all that trouble.
I know. We just had.
Uh-oh. Hello? Hello? Ah, nuts. Looks like I lost her. Welcome to AQS Inmate Call, and I am your host, Joel Wilborn. And this is the third and final installment of my Paula Gardner series. And just to give a recap, Paula Gardner is the individual who developed a diagnosis for terminal cancer while incarcerated under the Washington DOC. And due to their misconduct, their inability to follow procedure, and their mistreatment in the medical department of Washington Correction Center for Women, she was diagnosed too late to have any proper treatment. If they had followed proper procedures, she would have received her diagnosis and plenty of time to at least start treating the cancer. So now it's terminal, and she went to court and she won a $9.9 million settlement. And I'm just giving the story behind how that happened. And in this episode, I'm going to deal with communication. And this is me dealing directly with Paula Gardner, trying to get my information shared. And I believe if they hadn't been such, didn't resist so much, I think she wouldn't have been diagnosed so late. They would have been able to get onto it early, because I've been complaining about this for quite some time. Now, first, I'll go over a letter by Lisa Flynn, and it states, "This letter is in response to the correspondence you sent to the DOC Correspondence Unit on May 27, 2020, regarding your denial of visit privileges with Paula Gardner, DOC 838078. In reviewing the request for visitation, your previous actions in failing to follow DOC policies resulted in your permanent suspension from the system, which is still in effect. This includes all visitation privileges, including J-pay. While you indicate you are not a threat to Ms. Gardner's safety or security, your continued lack of compliance to DOC policy requirements is a safety and security concern for DOC prison facilities, those housed in our facilities, staff, volunteers, and others. The denial of visit privileges is appropriate and remains in place. The department has authority to make determinations on who has access to DOC premises. Due to your previous repeated disregard for DOC policy, you are not authorized on any DOC facility grounds. All opportunities for appeal have been exhausted. Future inquiries submitted by yourself or by another individual regarding visit privileges will not receive a response. Now, what they're telling me is that I've violated all of these policies, which, according to their policy and by law, they need to list those policies. So I'm violating policies that I have no idea how to review them, how to look at them. How can you do an appeal when you don't even know what policies you've violated? And when I sent mine in, I just said, I'm not in violation of any policies. You didn't list anything. And they're saying that you continue to violate policies. And to this day, I don't know, because they will not respond. They sent that letter out and said, we're done. We're not going to talk about it anymore. Now, in that letter, she's stating that the visitation privileges includes JPay. And that JPay is a service under contract by the DOC that allows people to send e-messages. And the DOC no longer uses JPay, or at least the Washington DOC. They now switched over to an email service called Securus. So at this time, we were using JPay, and they specifically stated that I'm no longer to use JPay. And when they blocked my JPay, they blocked it for the entire United States. So the Washington Department of Corrections has the authority to end my JPay account nationwide. And I'm not sure what that has to do with visitation, but they linked them together. Now, according to Washington state law, government officials in their official line of work, performing official duties, cannot give misleading or false information. In other words, they can't lie. And to tell me that the visitation policy, which was not listed, in which I am absolutely not in violation of, that according to them, they can permanently deny me visitation and to be able to go on the premises. Meaning that if I wanted to go to one of the state prisons and pick up a person who had just been released, I am not allowed onto the premises because I said I'm not a danger because I haven't violated any policies and they have never listed policies. Then, but they're saying that I am because I continue to violate policy. Now, remember, Paula won a $9.9 million lawsuit because they did not follow policy. When the DOC violates policy, they just make a payout. But if they say that somebody violates policy, then you could be permanently banned from visitation. And I have yet to hear that I violated the visitation policy, and I have yet to hear that I violated the e-messaging policy. And to just list the policy, like policy 30B, is not enough because you have to be specific. What part of that policy did you violate? In it, they do offer an appeal if they deny something. If they come up with a suspension or an infraction, something that deals with violating policy, you're going to need that information for the appeal. And I sent the appeal in completely blind. And that just gives you an idea of how the DOC is set up on here. Now, I did request an appeal for the JPay, and this was back in 2019. Now, in this letter, it says, this letter is in response to your request to appeal your recent suspension from the JPay program. As noted in previous communication, you were found to have violated multiple DOC policies and the terms of the JPay user agreement. Additionally, numerous women incarcerated at the Washington Correction Center for Women have stated they do not wish to communicate with you and would like all contact from you to cease. As noted in a previous response provided to you, your suspension is in place for 6 months. In the event you attempt to open alias JPay accounts, your access to JPay will be terminated indefinitely. Once your suspension is complete, you may request your account to be restored by contacting Keith DeFlitch at 360-725-8536. Your appeal to reinstate your JPay account is denied. No further communication will occur regarding this matter. Now, take a look at that. It says my appeal is denied. And then in the previous paragraph, it says, once your suspension is complete, you may request your account be restored by contacting Keith DeFlitch. If no further communication will occur regarding this matter, how can I contact this guy and get my account restored? Now, again, I want to remind you, they cannot lie in these correspondence, these official correspondence. So let's take a look at this JPay part. I called up JPay because they said the terms of the JPay user agreement. So I called up JPay. You can see it on my YouTube channel. I did record the conversation. And I went over several little things that were of concern to me. And as I'm going over these accusations, the representative and I found nothing that I was in violation of. I was in complete compliance with the JPay user agreement. I am not in any violations, or I have not committed any violations of any of the policies, and I am not in violation of the JPay user agreement. So this is not true, and I definitely have that documented. And then you look at this other one. Numerous women incarcerated at the Washington Correction Center for Women have stated they do not wish to communicate with you and would like all contact from you to cease. Okay, now, since I did write to her and say, this is a concern of mine. You are the chief of security operations, and you're telling me that there are numerous women who don't want to speak to me, which means if I write a letter, I could write a letter to anybody that's in that correction center and reach somebody who doesn't want to talk to me. Now, when somebody doesn't want somebody to talk to them, that's like a legal issue. And so if you want no contact, and I support that 100%, because there's people out here that are really angry at somebody in the prison and they want to just harass them. And if this person says, I want no further contact from this guy, it's the prison's responsibility to reach out and say, this person doesn't want contact with you. It would be nice to be specific. If it was Jane Doe who didn't want to speak to John Doe and said, Mr. Doe, Mrs. Doe does not want any further contact with you. But to say numerous women don't want to talk to you, Mr. Doe, that how can you appeal that? How can you defend anything on something like that? So I decided to do some research of my own. I actually contacted some of the people I know, staff and incarcerated people at the prison, and asked, is there anybody in there that doesn't want to talk to me? And, after several months, no, there was nobody. Matter of fact, I got more contacts because people did want to talk to me about some issues they were having, which I was glad to work with. But see, they're trying to stop me from doing my job. I'm a prison reform advocate. And in order to do that, I need to hear the complaints from the people. And to stop me from visiting, to stop me from communicating email, regular mail, and telephone, that's one way to keep the complaints from coming out. And as Lisa Flynn listed, I do use other people. And she was saying, you cannot do it and other people can't. Well, I called the governor's office and I said, how in the world am I supposed to get through to these folks? And they said, just use somebody else. And I have full support on that. I mean, that right there is not true. So there's a lot of falsehoods in these two letters from these two individuals, Charlotte Headley and Lisa Flynn. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a background on this so you'll know what led up to all of this. Now, it's not true that there's numerous women incarcerated at the Washington Correction Center for Women who want to talk to me. I've already established that. But I was dating a young lady named Brittany. And our relationship was going pretty good. She even contacted this show called Love After Lockup. And the producers contacted me and they said, when she's within 6 months of getting out, we would like to come down and film and discuss with you the relationship that people have on the outside with somebody who's locked up. She was really into it. She wanted to share it with the world. So while we were waiting for the 6-month period to come along, she contacts me and asks if it's okay that she dates somebody that's in there or have a relationship with somebody. And, I didn't care. Well, it got to the point where she was feeling really comfortable with this person. They had known each other for a long time, and her and this person, whose name is Mandy, hooked up. And so they decided, well, we don't need Joel anymore. And Brittany doesn't really she doesn't really want to dump anything, but Mandy, she doesn't like other people in there. So I became part of this um, love triangle. So Mandy was sending me emails, and I was copying emails and sending them to the DOC because they were just nasty. She was just being hateful. You need to get away. And I said, well, I'm just friends with Brittany. If you guys are together, I don't care. But she was just terrible about it. So she had Brittany write a letter. I don't want any more contact with you. I'm breaking up with you. I want to be with Mandy. She's the love of my life. And then Mandy sent this letter to headquarters just describing how terrible a person I am. So all this drama caused them to shut down everything, terminate my visitation, terminate the JPay. And that really had no, it wasn't any violation of any policies. And they did list that these two people, Mandy and Brittany, did not want to talk to me, which is fine. Those are the only two I knew about. Two, when you say numerous women, you think there's quite a bit of women. It would have been easier to say two women or Brittany and Mandy, because that's what a security chief should do. You want to be as specific as possible. To say nobody in the building wants to talk to you, that's not true. And to say numerous women, to me, numerous is quite a bit. And once again, these are very vague statements. Multiple policies, numerous women. It's just mind boggling. And then they be caught up in all that drama. Well, here's what's interesting too. Brittany continued to call me because that was the only way to contact me. There was no other restrictions on it. Well, they could send a letter. So she couldn't send out the letters because the mailroom would block it, but she could call me. And I continued to put money on her books. And then since JPay was blocked, Mandy would call me just to get some ideas about what's going on with Brittany. And I had no problem with them contacting me, and I knew exactly what was going on. They got their way. They blocked the JPay because the DOC said I was violating all these policies. And so I was still in communication with everybody, anybody and everybody in that facility. Well, I went to pick up Brittany. And of course, to do that, you had to go onto the facility. I walked inside the facility and I picked her up. Well, actually, we were able to skip the facility and I was able to pick her up at the bus station. Yes, I didn't go to the facility. I did that later on. So to bypass the entering the facility, I picked her up at the bus station, brought her home. We talked about things. She discussed what was going on and how she was being deceived and manipulated. And that was kind of interesting too. Gave me something else to talk about. Well, in the meantime, Mandy still contacted me. And then I loaned my car to Brittany to go pick up Mandy. And then Mandy and everybody, we were all meeting together. And to me, everything was fine. I let them go their separate way. Well, eventually, Mandy and Brittany broke up. And Mandy went back to prison. And then the person found out about it, asked me to send out a message. And so I was using Securus at that time because JPay was gone. And since I wasn't blocked from Securus, I opened up an account. Well, I already had an account because I was contacting Paula. But I was able to send the information to Mandy. Mandy came back with a nasty letter. How dare you contact me? You're not a terrible person and stuff. And I thought, I'm just trying to help the folks in there. She asked me for assistance. If you don't want to send her a reply, that's fine with me. Eventually, she kind of let down her guard and she wasn't so defensive. And we communicated. She found out that I am a prison advocate. I am not an enemy. I'm not a threat to her. I just want the people to be happy. And if Brittany is happier with her, that's fine. Well, she asked me to help a few of the people that were in there, and I was able to get some messages out, and together we were able to get the issues resolved, which is good. And then she asked me to help her new girlfriend. And her new girlfriend is going to transfer over to Spokane. And Spokane has a work release home called Eleanor Chase. So that's a little pause in our story right now. I met Donna a few years ago, and then Donna went to prison, and she introduced me to a few people. Donna was the one who introduced me to Brittany, and Brittany was the one who introduced me to Paula. Well, Donna also introduced me to Melissa, and I worked with Melissa, and when Melissa finally got out, she went to Eleanor Chase. Now, I had visited Donna when she was in Eleanor Chase. I had visited Brittany when she was in Eleanor Chase. So I put in a visitation to visit Melissa. It was denied because Melissa is married, and it wasn't right for me, a single prison reform advocate, to be visiting a married woman, even though her husband had no problem with it, because he was having difficulty to go because of his record. And usually when people are denied visitation, it's because they have a very strong record, violent record, criminal record, not because they violated these mysterious policies. But that one was kind of weird. That was not in any of the policies, and they didn't even say you're denied because you violated policies. They just said because she's married. So with Mandy's girlfriend coming over here, I'm going to put in for visitation for her, and it's going to be interesting what they say. And I will definitely appeal it because I have a right to do that, and they can't overwrite state law, and they can't overwrite their own policy. To say we're not, you exhausted all your appeals, you can't talk anymore. No, no, no. Every visitation I apply for, I can appeal, and I can do that indefinitely, according to their policy. And remember, they're the ones that had to pay out $9.9 million because they don't follow policy. Now, moving ahead, we have a situation where the DOC is doing its very best to suppress people who are going to expose some information. I like being stopped. It would be nice if they would just listen to me. And I had a woman once that sent me a picture of her tattoo, and she was believing that there was something in the tattoo that was causing some rash. And my sister is a physician, so I sent that picture to her, and she gave me her diagnosis of it, and I sent the information to this woman, and she was quite happy with it. And I'm just thinking, why did she have to send it to me? And that's because she doesn't trust the medical system in there. The Washington Correction Center for Women is terrible. And I also have another person I'm working with, and you can look at her story on my YouTube channel as well. It's Cindy Rhodes. Now, they call her Cynthia Miller, but her real name is Cindy Rhodes, and they won't change it. And she's discussed that in her testimonial. And so I'm working with her, trying to get them to listen to me. But here's what's interesting about WCCW. Charlotte Headley, the chief of security, who said that I violated multiple policies and should not be using JPay, she is now running WCCW. And so here it is. I have my past catching up with me with somebody that obviously doesn't know how to follow policy. So it doesn't surprise me that DOC would lose a lawsuit because they failed to follow policy. Now, just to wrap it all up, DOC needs to be held accountable for its actions. It's easy for them to chastise people that they claim isn't following policy. Yet they manipulate and change things around just to fit their own agenda. And that's what got them in trouble. We need to keep an eye on the DOC. It would be nice to have a watchdog for them. They shouldn't have as many privileges as they do. It's the Washington DOC is terrible. And WCCW is a terrible prison for a woman to be in. They're not really big on security. You know, they spent more time investigating me and blocking me than listening. If I had been allowed to visit Paula and to keep regular contact with her, she would have been able to keep me regularly updated on her cancer. Now, when I met her, she didn't have a diagnosis. She went to Yakima for an overflow. During that period of her switching from WCCW to Yakima, they failed to perform a crucial test. Well, visiting her, we would have been able to discuss that. She would have been open with it because they're not listening in over the phone conversations, and that's something that's personal to her. I would have been able to talk with my sister, talk with some professionals out here, and I would have had somebody contact the prison and said this is serious because she could possibly develop cancer. Now, there's no guarantee I could have prevented that, but it would have been nice to have that opportunity. I was so busy getting rejection letters and denials that we couldn't do our proper job. And now she's has terminal cancer. And I truly believe that could have been prevented. So I reach out to the community. I want to share this information because they have great procedures out there. They just need to learn to follow them. And if they don't, they need to be heavily chastised about it. They need to change their program. They need to add more resources and get better training, because this is something that could have easily have been prevented. There was no reason to allow this to go on. And I'm going to do the very best I can to get all my privileges restored so I can have a working relationship with these folks. And I'm going to keep on fighting the system. So the people that are reaching out to me, I'm working with them and I'm sharing their story. And you can see all of that again on my YouTube channel. Well, I thank you for tuning in. I enjoyed doing this series. I wish it had a happier ending. And hopefully you'll be able to get out and get involved and talk with your family, friends, and let's make a difference. We can fix this thing. Well, go out and have yourself a wonderful day and make fantastic memories for tomorrow.